Could you just tell me your name, year, and major?
My name is Grant Collins. I'm a junior at App State. I'm a marketing major.
Tell me about the origins of this podcast and how you and your co-host got the idea to start this.
So when I was in high school, a couple of my friends and I did a podcast and we did one episode and then they got lazy and so I wanted to keep doing it, but they said it was too much work, which it wasn't. So I was at lunch with my friend Connor, who's my co-host, and I was like, hey, crazy story, but I did a podcast in high school and I'd love to bring it back. Would you be interested? And that's how it happened. Very spontaneous.
And how did you and Connor become friends?
Through Crew, it's a Christian campus ministry here at App, and over time there wasn't a specific moment or day that I remember us becoming friends, but I just, through events and through time.
Gotcha. What's the focus of this podcast?
The focus is faith and sports, so we talk some of the episodes about like different, or all the episodes, but there's different segments in the episodes. Half of it is about like our faith in different scripture throughout the Bible and different passages, and some of it is about like what's currently going on in the sports world.
And what's the name of the podcast?
Taking the Charge.
Taking the Charge. How'd you come up with that?
So that was like a really spur of the moment thing. It just has two meanings, like because we talk about sports, you want to take a charge in basketball, but also like taking the charge of your life, about like putting God at the center of your life.
Gotcha. So the focus is sports and faith. Can you talk a little bit about your background with sports and faith?
Yeah, so I was raised in a Christian household, so I've been like told and like talked to about different Christian themes my whole life, but I didn't really take my faith to my own until going into my sophomore year of college, and so that's like general background of my faith. Sports, I've played basketball and tennis my whole life, and don't play here at App, but still play around for fun, so that's why those two things are really prevalent in my life, and those are two good topics and themes to talk about in the podcast.
Gotcha. What made you decide or motivated you to start this podcast?
Like I said earlier, it was just kind of like something I did like 5-6 years ago with some friends and want to bring it back, as well as like really cool opportunity to use a platform for my faith and for God, instead of just using it just for sports, which would have been fine, but like realize this could be a good opportunity.
Yeah. What's the format or schedule of a typical Taking the Charge podcast? Like weekly, leading up to it, after, all that, but also during the episode?
Yeah, so we record on Monday nights in the library. There's like a little audio room. And then on Wednesdays around 12 o'clock, we post it on Spotify. That's our only streaming service. That's not a streaming service. That's the only output we post it on now. We were thinking about YouTube, but we haven't gone there yet. And then through the format of the podcast itself, it's like a little introduction, talk about what's been going on in Connor and I's lives the past couple of days, past week. And then we transition into sports and then make a transition into faith.
Gotcha. And how long are the episodes usually?
So on average, it's probably been like 45 minutes each, but some have been shorter than that, some have been longer, but probably around 45 for the future.
So you guys bring on guests to the podcast?
We do bring on guests. We've had 4 guest speakers so far, and it's been a cool opportunity just to have other people share perspectives.
What kind of guests do you try to bring on, or how do you choose those special guests for each week?
Yeah, so it's most of our friends, just through Crew, and it's first come, first serve, and so they be put on the list, and then it's not really selective at all. If there's someone like we don't really know that well, we might go into additional questions, but the people we've had so far, they've been great, and so it's just first come, first serve.
You got a long list?
Yeah, we probably have 5 or 6 people still that have made requests to be a guest, so we're pretty good for like up until the 8th or 9th episode in terms of special guests.
Sweet. Thus far, what have been some of your favorite moments working on the podcast or filming episodes?
Favorite moment? Probably just like the authenticity of it. Like for the first 2 and even this past episode, we had a little bit of so-called script, but like at the end of the day, we just kind of like we're talking about whatever was on our mind. Related to like the topics we wanted to cover, but we didn't have a like mention this, mention that. It was kind of like going for it, and so I've enjoyed like the realness and just like the goofiness of it. I think last episode with Faith Over Fear was my favorite episode, just because that's something that has been really prevalent in my life the past week and a half, as well as I really enjoyed our guest speakers on our last episode.
Gotcha. what do you hope this podcast accomplishes, or what effect do you want it to have?
Just like having an effect on other people that are believers or non-believers, to share the gospel at the end of the day. I mean, that's what we're called to do in Matthew 28. And so that's something that through this platform, I think can be a really good opportunity to like initiate those conversations, to have those conversations. If people listen and like, oh, I really like that topic, do you want to talk about it more? And so just using the platform to spread the gospel.
Gotcha. And then last question, can you share some short-term goals that you have for the podcast and also some long-term goals?
I'd say just have as many people that want to be guest speakers on the podcast as possible before summer comes and everyone goes back home or wherever they're working. Long-term goal is Connor and I haven't really gotten there yet, but we'll both still be at App next year, so it'd be a blessing and truly be grateful if we could still do the podcast in the fall. So nothing huge right now, but that's in the works.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course, thank you.